Now, to discuss the commemoration of the genocide, we're joined by Professor Siphamandla Zondi. He's the director at the Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation at the University of Johannesburg. Good afternoon, Professor, and thank you very much for joining Full View. So today, it's the 30th commemoration of the genocide, a genocide which, among others, destroyed Rwanda's very fragile economic base and severely impoverished the population. But 30 years later, they've made significant progress in stabilizing and rehabilitating the economy and pursued a policy of unity and reconciliation. What lessons can we all draw from the story of Rwanda?
Good afternoon to the viewers as well. A number of lessons. One lesson is that out of a deep crisis, a new path to growth, prosperity and stability can actually be charted. If there is firm leadership, if there is strong focus, if there is determination never to repeat the mistakes of the past. The second one is that the best way to respond to a calamity such as the one that took place in Rwanda, the genocide, is to build a united nation and unite the nation around common aspirations. Both the victims and the perpetrators in Rwanda desired to live well, desired to live in a peaceful country, in a prosperous country with opportunities. And focusing on that helped to defocus from the negative energies that have generated the conflict in the past. Mm-hmm. The third one is that no amount of shame, no amount of feeling sorry for yourself will ever help your country change around. But you can use all of that past shame and past pain in order to build something a little better. It's a lesson we in South Africa needed to learn very strongly after apartheid too, that the best way to respond to a problem such as apartheid is to build a society energetically so that is opposite of that which you want to walk away from. And lastly, it is that a country of whatever size, of whatever endowment of resources, can rise up to a significant country in Africa and in the world if it decides to do so. Mm-hmm. It shows collective leadership, collective focus, vision. It can always do so. Mm-hmm. But lastly, in the process of that, there will also be fault lines. There will be mistakes, there will be weaknesses, there will be incomplete development, such as you see in Rwanda now.
Mm-hmm, most certainly. So, Professor, the presence of the President Cyril Ramaphosa at today's commemoration was one of the many talking points as well, given the very complex relationship between the two countries over the years. And I'm euphemistic in my use of the term complex. We know relations were severely strained. So what are we to read into the attendance and the warm interaction between the two leaders today?
I think it's part of the build-up in the process of normalizing the relationship and improving the relationship and changing it towards a positive relationship and manage the difficulties between the two countries, which is a process that started way back in 2018, by the way. So this is the fifth year almost now, fifth year of working at this, and the decision by the president to attend the commemoration I guess is calculated to give a boost to those efforts. It's a work in progress. It's going to take a bit of time, and one will just have to wait and see how this evolves into economic, trade, investment, educational, cultural relations that are productive. But it's work that must go into it, perhaps for a few more months or years.
Professor, I want us to look at some of the issues that have contributed to that very difficult relationship between South Africa and Rwanda. The main one being the 2013 killing here in South Africa of President Kagame's former aide and intelligence chief. I believe it was Patrick Karegeya. Now, President Kagame took exception to just the perpetuation of the allegation that he ordered the hit. Just talk us through the impact of that particular death on Kagame's reputation, especially as a donor darling among Western development officials and philanthropic foundations that have marveled at the country's progress post-genocide.
One of the fault lines of Rwanda has been this lacking suspicion all the time that the government in Rwanda under Kagame has been dealing with opposition politicians. You know, of a number of them now, some of them are in jail as we speak. Some of them have died under mysterious conditions, including the two that died in South Africa, or actually the three now that have died in South Africa, and under mysterious conditions and with suspicions that the government of Kagame has an underhand in this activity. And Rwanda has not been able to persuade everybody that it is completely innocent in all of this, that it is not involved in all of this. It's a difficult one. It will remain a sort of a dark cloud hanging over what is actually an illustrious career for Kagame after 1994.
Sorry for interjecting there, just in the interest of time. It seems President Kagame struggled with why his former allies would generally decide to come and set up shop in South Africa here to mobilize for their new opposition parties. And somehow it seems as though he arrived at a conclusion that South Africa was a big part of some sort of an agenda to topple him. Was that a fair assertion, though? Because some of these former allies would just choose a country and perhaps they felt South Africa was the most stable.
Yes, a question shouldn't arise why a former political associate decides to be a critic of yourself. In a democratic system, that is perfectly okay. In a democratic system, that's something that you need to welcome. You should not already assume that every opposition is about toppling you. It might come from Kagame's background in the military, that he hasn't quite overcome that idea that adversaries in politics are not enemies.
But us becoming the host, but it seems as though there was some sort of a...
If there were issues about the subversive activities of these guys, they could have worked with the South African security services to manage that, because even in South African law, it would be illegal to plot a coup from South Africa in Rwanda.
Now, Professor, just in closing, an interview with Siphamandla that happened a bit earlier. President Kagame seemed reluctant to express a view on the global conflict when his view was solicited by Siphamandla. He prefaced his statement by saying that they have their own problems as Rwanda and issues with neighboring countries, so he would not be all that qualified to speak on the world. Would it be far-fetched for some to assume that an issue such as the Gaza war would be quite difficult to speak on so far as he's concerned? Because the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, we understand, was attending today's commemoration, and Rwanda is also yet to finalize the controversial deportation bill with the UK, a UK that we know is sympathetic towards an Israel. Would it be a very difficult conversation for President Kagame to have?
Yes, of course. We know the position of Rwanda, that it is a little closer to Israel than other African countries. But we also know that they also are treading very carefully on this, because that closeness of relationship has to do with trade also, and investments and money that comes in. Because we must remember that Rwanda is a very small country, very, very small, tiny country, and very vulnerable. And I think he's trying to choose his battles and stay out of certain controversies and stay out of certain battles, because he realizes that they cannot afford it. It is purely in Rwanda's interest to decide its friends. And then in this particular case, it has decided that Israel is one of its friends, and that it is going to be careful not to either endorse Israel or criticize Israel. It simply just stays out of that issue, because it hasn't actually supported Israel's stance. Neither has it really attacked it as other countries have.
All right, Professor, thank you very much for your insights this afternoon. That was Professor Siphamandla Zondi. He's from the Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation. He happens to be the director there at the University of Johannesburg.